the city of Phoenix has actually been studying this issue quite a bit. Phoenix, like Houston, has quite a problem with the urban heat island effect. On the summer evening, July evening in Houston, the 8 o'clock in the evening temperature in downtown Houston is about 12 to 15 degrees higher than it is in the surrounding desert. And that difference actually is even higher than that at midnight, which is a pretty major issue for them. And plus, you know, you get the thing that you hear in Houston a lot too, which is nobody will walk if it's too hot here in the summer. Phoenix has done, with Arizona State University Sustainability Center, an extensive evaluation of, are we stuck with that outcome? Do we have to have streets like this? Is there something else that can work better? And they've actually had a pretty surprising result. They've looked at building massing and location and how the corners work, because there is air circulation. They've looked at how you shade at the street and how that relates to the width of the street, and they've looked at other detailing. And with reasonably accessible, not overly expensive design changes, not making urban heat island effect go away. That's still there. You still could reduce the ambient street level perceived temperature for pedestrians by 10 to 15 degrees. On a 115-degree day, that's a pretty significant change. So Phoenix is looking into this with a lot of interest because they realize that they're going to have walkable activity centers, places like downtown, Camelback, Boulder, and other places are going to have to be walkable if they're going to get a sustainable city. And finally, a point that matters a lot for pedestrianization is this notion of land use mix. This is the Boulder Mall again with a couple of token workers shown. This is an aerial view of the mall. It's 4 blocks long. Here. It's, you know, we didn't build it. It was just a street. We just closed it to traffic. So it's always been there. It's just part of a gridded environment. What happens there is somebody will, there's all these land uses, government offices, private offices, retail, restaurants, all that stuff is in that area. So somebody will leave their office at lunch, at noon, and go to have lunch, and go to run an errand, and do some quick shopping, and go back, and that goes on all day long, times all of the people who are in all of these offices and hotel rooms. And so it creates an incredibly busy place, just by the ordinary busyness of human nature and all of the linkages between these land uses. So a land use mix generates pedestrian activity big time. It's a really important thing to do. And once you do that, guess what? You get more people. Because the thing that we crave most about places where we might be pedestrians is we crave, it's a tad warming here, isn't it? Maybe just up here. We crave places where we can see other people. People watching is one of our most important pedestrian activities. Okay, I want to talk about a simple rating system we use for environments, and I'll relate it back to the classifications of pedestrians. We do a lot of work for cities, and one of the things that cities love to do is they'll write a comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan will have a policy, and the policy will say, the city of fill in the blank will be a pedestrian-friendly city. That's just tokenism. It's just a slogan. It's not a policy. And we get hired a lot by cities that are saying, well, we have this policy and we don't seem to be making much progress on it. So one of the first things we say is, well, pedestrian friendly is not a particularly useful concept. For example, here's the mall in the city that we've been talking about, a very pedestrian friendly place. Now that I say it, I don't know if I have that photo there, but let's keep going. So we use this classification as a hierarchy of pedestrian friendliness, which really helps you deal with the fact, oh, I know why it's here, that your whole city can't be like this. The whole city of Boulder is not like this. Little dark secret, we have our nasty suburban streets too. We have our overblown arterials. We have neighborhoods with streets without sidewalks, on and on. We don't want you to know that. We want you to think our whole city is pedestrian friendly. So it's helpful if you actually want to make progress on this to have access to a hierarchy of pedestrian place types, and let me that are on a continuum Now, we used to call this pedestrian hostile, except our clients wouldn't adopt a plan that had pedestrian hostile in it, so we had to change it to pedestrian tolerant. So, pedestrian place, the highest category. Pedestrian place or district must have mixed use, including multiple retail destinations, or it's qualified. It has to be known, you have to be able to give it a name. So if you have to say, I spent some time, and you say the name of the place, and everybody goes, oh, and they know what you're talking about. If you don't have identity as a place, it's not. It has to obviously have significant pedestrian presence, because that generates pedestrian presence. Motor vehicles should be present. We actually, the Boulder Mall, one of the interesting things about it is that streets cross every block. And there's quite a lot of traffic in downtown Boulder. You want a successful pedestrian environment, pick your European city that you think is a great place to walk around in. I'll show you a city with a lot of congested streets and a lot of traffic on their streets. So this is, motor vehicles are present, but they don't dominate. They're kept in their place, and the pedestrians are given priority. And I'll come back to this point at the end of the talk. So a pedestrian place is this very special kind of place that you can only have a limited amount of. This is Ocean Boulevard on South Beach in Miami Beach. Some of you have been there. Another place where you can spend a lot of money in a short amount of time. This is actually a fairly short, the really sweet section of this is only about 6-7 blocks long. So there's a limit to how much of this you can have. And this, if you went to this area in the late 1970s, early 1980s, as my wife and I used to, this used to be kind of decrepit. But what brought it back was the inherent bones of the place are really, really good. Obviously, the ocean's right over here. The buildings are nice. They're nice, certainly, once they're renovated and so forth. But you don't have an overly generous sidewalk. It's a sort of maybe not as wide as you'd like it to be, except that it's kind of a Latin place. It's like being a little crowded. The next level down is pedestrian supported. Again, mixed use is necessary, including especially residential. The pedestrians have to come from somewhere. It should include embedded placements. Some of those we were just looking at should be embedded in there. Pedestrians are present at busy times, but it may be times when there are not all that many people on the sidewalk. Again, the motor vehicles are present, but they don't dominate. This is the workhorse street of cities. This is a kind of street you should aspire to any place where you want to have development or redevelopment. You want the embedded places too. It's just a work-a-day street. This is in Redmond Town Center in Redmond, Washington. Nothing fancy about this, nothing elaborate about it. A lot of people walk on it, but there are times of the day when you might be the only pedestrian out there. There are other times of the day when there'll be a lot of pedestrians coming to from work. We've been building this kind of street for 80 years. This is an old university town in Iowa. This main street was built in the century before the last century. Here's a street in Longmont, Colorado, where everything is just right. And even though there's very heavy traffic on US 287 right here, between 30 and 40,000 cars a day, you have a very walkable environment, and they've managed against all odds to hang on to their main street retail businesses on that street. This is a pedestrian supported residential street. So the next category down is pedestrian tolerant, and you can come up with your own terms for these. The liberating idea is that your entire community cannot be pedestrian friendly, so you have to do some sort of classification and think about where you're going to put priority. Pedestrian tolerant is a variety of land uses. The only people who are going to be walking, you're not going to have strolling and lingering. And you may have a problem when motor vehicles dominate. So here's an example of that. This is a street in Redmond, Washington. You could walk here, you probably won't get killed, but it's not a place you would really choose to walk. These people are there because they're waiting for a bus. So it serves utilitarian walk purposes, but it's not a very good street. And we, ironically, can spend a lot of money building streets like that. This is a very expensive street with a very expensive sidewalk that is very, barely pedestrian tolerant. All those issues we talked about when I was talking about elements of the street, if you think back to that, most of those elements are correlated. Here's an ironic situation. This is one of our resort clients on Maui. They own everything in this picture. This wall could have been put anywhere. This dry stack wall could have been put 10 feet over. It could have been put anywhere. This resort markets itself as a place where you can go to improve your personal health, be active, and do yoga on the beach, all that kind of stuff. And their sidewalks are designed like that. And you can have some places that barely you think even work, but they do work, even though this is just gravel. It's, you know, it's not always, the fact is that the traffic on this street is slow, it's fairly low speed, and you can walk here, it's not very nice, but you can get through and survive. Here's another example of that kind of street. Pedestrian tunnel. You can walk there, you probably wouldn't choose to. So, you know, this should be the minimum that you allow in your city. It's not something you aspire to, but you're going to have some of it, and everybody knows that. And then you're going to have this, the intolerant. We all know what that looks like. It looks like this. No sidewalks at all, high-speed traffic. We all know what that looks like. People pushing strollers up the street. Your grandmother walking up the curb. So, the interesting thing is that climate has a role in this. This is a street that in the wintertime is probably pedestrian tolerant, maybe even pedestrian supported. In the summertime, it's pedestrian. So, if you combine the classification system that I talked to you about earlier, of the types of walking with the types of place, you can see what happens, which is that in pedestrian places, you're going to get some utilitarian walking. We have people who power walk up the mall all the time. Great place to go first. Or just come out for an evening walk. There's a lot of residential around it. We have people who use the sidewalk to the mall to go places, get to work, get to the bus. And we have people who just come there to hang out. And that's the people we make our money off of on the mall, those people. So we have these all in large numbers on the mall. In a pedestrian supportive environment, you won't have quite as many of these. You'll still have some. And maybe on some days you can close the street and have a lot. But most days that's going to be kind of modest. It's a great street, people can walk, but you're not going to have, you don't need the kind of pedestrian volumes that we have on the Pearl Mall and the 4-block area of the mall on every sidewalk in your town. It's not possible if you were less gas goes $9 a gallon, maybe you need it. So this is going to be a smaller slice, but these are still very, very important. When you get to pedestrian tolerant, you're down to just your utilitarian walkers and your rampers. And when you get to pedestrian intolerant, you're okay. So you can actually start to classify your place types and your walking types in terms of what you think, you know, is it a shopping district, so you want strolling and lingering, well then you're going to have some of this. And you can start to think analytically about how you use those concepts. And then I'll wrap up with this, just a couple of thoughts on this. This is a bottomless subject, so I'm only going to cover some things. We would suggest, and Dave, we're going to make a copy of this available, right, on your website. Yeah. It isn't available yet, but I will give David a PDF of this so you don't have to get writing this stuff down. But I would suggest that you develop level of service measures for your pedestrian environments so that you have some objective way of evaluating what is a good walk environment and what's not and why. And you can relate that back to design. That's done in a lot of cities now. You have a lot of examples. We developed one for Fort Collins, Colorado that's available on the web. So you can find these. It's just kind of a simple idea. Use it in planning. You can use it in development review. You can use it in guiding what the public works spending program looks like. Set design standards, and I know this is a challenging place to work, so you will know how to do this, but set design standards for the benefits of your landowners and businesses. The irony in this process is that a landowner will fight against you when you're trying to achieve a pedestrian space that ultimately will add value to their property, because we've lost our understanding of that relationship. Especially as we transition to post-petroleum age away from total reliance on motor vehicles, we're going to have to relearn some of these ideas. So design standards are a good step on this. In a lot of cities, we have issues with this. This is the issue of accountability. The city does not want to take on maintenance of street trees. The city does not want to take on maintenance of other nice street features. Like, you know, asphalt's cheap, pavers are expensive. We don't want pavers, just do asphalt. So funding operations and maintenance, even through special districts. Some cities we work for have actually done a citywide special property tax levy, whatever the system is. Find a way to do that, because otherwise you'll be moving stuff that will be paid. And prioritize. The point I made a moment ago that your entire city is not going to be pedestrian friendly. And so let me close with, and obviously in Houston, your attention over the next 10 years or so should be, in terms of prioritization, should be on supporting the development of rails, and making sure that you have walkable neighborhoods around your transit stations, just to state the obvious. Okay, so final example about how this can come together and how it came together in the program. This is, I told you earlier that we have nasty streets in Boulder, so here I am showing you a picture to prove my point. Notice the nice pedestrian accommodation. All of the rules are broken, and yet we still have it. So we think of the pedestrian law as a pedestrian facility, and it's not. First of all, what it is it's a node within a gridded street network, and it wouldn't work if it broke. So the fact that you have very good motor vehicle access and very good motor vehicle circulation, even around downtown Boulder, makes a big difference, and it makes the mall work. So that little microgrid around downtown, and I'll show you the slide of that in a second, is very important. So now there are obviously a lot of design features here, but what that is a 4-block long segment of a gridded street network. And we kept the grid alive. The only thing we lost was this section right here. That's the only thing we lost from the mall. So we didn't lose the cross segments. Eugene, Oregon, when they did their mall, they closed a lot of these cross streets, and that's why the mall failed to pull it out. Know that 2/3 of the pedestrian malls built in North America over the last 50 years have failed and they've been taken out. Very difficult to have these succeed. We have a lot of parking. We've spent a lot of money on parking. It's not about anti-car. We have to produce pedestrians. They don't materialize out of thin air. And one of the places we get them is from parked cars. So we have parking garages. This parking garage is actually our downtown transit center. So we actually have parking at our building. So the traffic access, the motor vehicle access to that mall is excellent. It's the easiest place in Boulder to get, in my opinion. The transit routes converge on the downtown, as they do in many downtowns. And that's becoming less true in Boulder. We're going to more of a gridded network kind of thing, but our downtown still has very, very good transit service. So it's very easy for my wife and I to get to downtown Boulder from our house on a bus. It's about as easy, probably on some days easier than driving, most days as easy as driving. Snow day, much better to take the bus. We have bike facilities that are gridded through the downtown. I'll show you a photo of that in a second. At a very high intensity. And we have an enormous bike presence in downtown. A really inexpensive way for people to move. The bike travel distance is about somewhere between a half mile and 5 miles a minute. That's the sweet spot for bicycling. And that meets a real major need in terms of reducing the last of motor vehicles that pedestrians can't meet. So here's, you didn't know this was a parking garage if you didn't put a sign out there, but it is. Lots and lots of parking. This is one of the new garages wrapped with retailing office, which is making a profit. Here's the bus center with parking above. Not very attractive. That was some years ago. Here's we're very proud of our comfortable bike lane on 13th Street. This is a one-way northbound street with this. And we get the occasional tourist in here with a Toyota coming down. But lots and lots of bike parking. Lots and lots of car parking. Everywhere we can get a parking space, we do it. And so we think this is a pedestrian model. And it is, but it works because it's actually part of an integral system. All that stuff was deployed to create pedestrian space. We didn't just create pedestrian space and focus those people in the show. All right, so what I did tonight was I talked about these 4 topics. What is a pedestrian? What kind of urban form is conducive to walking? How do we evaluate pedestrian environments? How can we classify them in a way so that we can write ordinances that make sense? And what are the key elements of pedestrian policy? I want to close with this point. All of the things we build as human beings, some of you heard the term urban morphology, but it's this notion of how long do things persist. When we plant things like trees and shrubs, a couple of years we tear them out. Even trees, a street tree might be 70, 80 years, maybe. Commercial buildings, maybe, quite honestly, in a lot of North America today, commercial buildings average lifespan 15 years, but whatever, potentially we can build them for longer than that. Residential buildings, maybe 300 years if they're built really, really well. We have certain buildings in the northeast that are that old. civic buildings, potentially at least a few centuries. We're capable of that. We don't do it always, but we're capable of that. Our pathway systems is out there similarly, our rail systems. But our major roads persist basically forever. If you've walked in Europe anywhere, if you've walked in Old Italy, if you've walked around the northeastern United States, you see land development patterns that are associated with decisions made about the placement and design of a road made hundreds of years ago. And those persist. Some of the most important decisions you make ever are the decisions you're making when you take a street out here that's a few blocks away and make it overly wide. You live with that, children or grandchildren, more than 7 generations. That's no choice. So it's critically important. Even though this is not about roads, what we're talking about tonight, the principal infrastructure for pedestrian circulation in every city is the roads and streets, and the choices and decisions you make about those persist basically for all practical purposes. Okay, I will put a copy of this up on my website too. It'll take me a day or so to get it there. And while you're up there, browse the front page. I do a lot of speaking, and I didn't get very technical tonight, and I've done a couple of technical talks recently on pedestrian issues, including one at North Carolina State in February. You can download those presentations too if you want more technical information about pedestrian design. But anyway, and then David Crossley at HoustonTomorrow.org, is that what that is? We'll have the same thing up there within a day or so. And with that, thank you very much.
So we'll have some questions and comments from you in just a second, but before I want to make an announcement. This is an interesting coincidence that the House today, the Texas House, passed the safe passing bill, which will make it illegal to actually pass and drop people on foot and bicycle or even parked cars in an unsafe manner. You'll be able to get a ticket. So it has to go through the Senate. So, call up your state. Am I right that it was the House? Not the
No, the Senate passed it already.
So does that mean it's finished?
Yeah.
Oh, that's it.
Did the House pass it?
Governor, so all right, there you go. So, if you have some questions and comments, let's do it.
Your comments were about especially the downtown as far as pedestrians. Can you find areas that you thought were pedestrian friendly in Houston, or any comments along those lines?
Well, I think that there are pedestrian friendly areas in Houston, and I don't know the city well enough to tell you where they are. I actually didn't think the downtown was too bad. I've stayed there a couple of times. It's the downtown. I think that in big city downtown end up not being too far pedestrian destinations in those cities. Quite honestly, you go to European cities, downtown's pedestrian friendly, but the really, really cool places are some other kind of activity center. Downtown Denver, I see a lot of potential. We did a project here 2 years ago in the summer to look at the Midtown region along Main where the red light is. And there's a lot of stuff that has to be done right. But it looked to me like there's a lot that it would be fairly straightforward to make that a great place and to make that a great street. Obviously, when you have a transit system there, it makes it possible to bring about the private sector development that would help you do some of that, because not all of it can be done with just public sector. So what I see in Houston is that I think this is an exciting city. It's an incredibly diverse city. It's growing very rapidly, which is makes things a little easier than the alternative. We've done some work in Cleveland, and if you want funding troubles, trying to do things in a city that's shrinking. So I think you have a lot of opportunity here. The street network, the blocks are a little big, and the streets are too high speed, and you're widening them when it shouldn't be. And there's a lot of things that are challenges, but I think there's an enormous amount of opportunity. And I think that David has the right idea when he argues that the sort of opportunity that's the most important opportunity in the short term is the opportunity to use those transit nodes around the new rail system as your opportunity to transform parts of your city in a way that are highly visible to the rest of the city, that can, ultimately you don't want just your transit nodes to be, we got a crummy city with good transit nodes. I mean, you want your whole city to be great, but you've got to start somewhere, and it takes a lot of time, and so I think that's where I would focus my interest. So yeah, Chris.
talk a little bit about pedestrian crosswalks, both signalized crosswalks and sometimes the torture of waiting for that signal when there's no cars inside, and unsignalized crosswalks, which a lot of traffic engineers seem to absolutely hate?
Well, yeah, I mean, I could have spent the whole evening talking about crosswalks. Here's some things I would say about that. First of all, we're still learning what makes a good crosswalk. Boulder has an active experimentation and research program on crosswalk type and crosswalk signalization system, mid-block crossings, how those work. We have a lot of places in Boulder where our blocks are too long, we have to do mid-block crossings to deal with that, including along the university. And so we've been experimenting with different types, the types that have the flashing yellow lights. The types that for a while we used the lights actually embedded in the pavements. We're not using those anymore. The type that have signing but no flashing lights, different kinds of surface treatments and so forth. The key thing that you want to do, and it's virtually impossible to do on a 7-lane street, okay? You might as well just sort of admit that you're not going to, it's pretty hard to do on a 7-lane street. It can be done, but it's pretty hard. But the most important thing to do is you have to make the pedestrian, obviously, the principal user by right space there, even when they're using crosswalk. There's a lot of psychology that goes into the reaction between motor vehicle drivers and pedestrians. And we all probably do this, which is if we perceive that the pedestrian is someplace they shouldn't be, then we'll maybe come a little closer to them than we should, or we'll maybe intimidate them a little bit, or we won't yield to them when we should. And so there's a lot of psychology that goes into that. So the design of a crosswalk can influence that psychology a lot. A raised crosswalk, a crosswalk with special treatment in the surface type. The signing we tend not to see, but there are things you can do with signing that have an impact. All those things we have our life. I think you're going to have to do more mid-block crossing in the city because I think your block lengths really takes forever to solve. You know, that slide I showed you of the streets and what happens when you build a street, how persistent that is in the landscape. It's really unusual for a city to come back in and increase the connectivity of the street network by adding new street lengths. I mean, you can do it sometimes in a couple of places, but you're not going to do a lot of it. So you're going to live with those long blocks, and so I think you're going to need mid-block crossings. I'm not an advocate for grade separations, but when you do bridges or underpasses, but when you do grade separations, we are heavily biased towards going under, and you don't have a lot of grade to work with in the city. It's kind of flat. In Boulder, we've worked with our riparian corners and done a lot of underpasses that are really well produced. Signals. Well, the thing in America, we go through trends, and for years the trend was, why don't you have headheads and why don't you have push buttons? And so everybody installed push buttons and headheads, and we got into the science of doing that better. So you might have the pedestrian little Walkman come up 5 seconds before the green light, so people can get out into the crosswalk before the right-turning vehicles took over the space. All that kind of stuff. But the general trend now in major cities across the country is to do away with pedestrian buttons and headheads at all. And just green means pedestrians go to. That's what Portland does. That's what Seattle does. What the pedestrian cities are doing now. So that's the kind of thing you can get into a long debate with traffic engineers on. And virtually every issue of the whatever the journal, ITD journal, virtually every issue of that has research pieces on what works to get pedestrians across the street safely. And I don't know that I can cover that. Is there something specific you want me to mention?
Well, I mean, my personal observation, I am actually a walking commuter. I walk 10 blocks from home to work in the morning. And I've discovered, this is downtown Houston, one-way streets and fairly narrow, 4 lanes or so, and I can see cars coming from a block away. I've discovered, frankly speaking, my commute is a lot more pleasant if I routinely jaywalk.
Yeah.
And that has struck me that there is something about how we maintain pedestrians that is making my walk a lot less pleasant if I actually follow the law. And I don't really
want to
know
comment on
the
that.
answer
You said that. I feel like you need to comment on that. I got into a lot of trouble in the community one time by saying that jaywalking is a sign of a healthy walking lane. Police chief took issue with that. We did a study for Albuquerque that showed, and I think we've proved our point, that the safest place to cross their major arterials was at mid-block by jaywalking. And the reason was that the number of potential conflicts was far greater at the intersection. The number of ways you could get hit by a car was actually greater at the intersection than it is in the block. Now that's lunacy. You know, I mean, quite honestly, those streets are moving at 35, 40 miles per hour. If you get hit, you're gone. And so what that says is that crossing in mid-block is something a smart pedestrian learns to do as a matter of survival. It's not actually a design strategy. We're doing it because our intersections are so poorly designed and are so unsafe. And there's a lot you can do to make an intersection safer and easier to cross. You can extend the median actually across the crosswalk so that the median actually serves as a safe place for the pedestrian to stand. We don't do that because we want trucks to be able to make the corner at a high rate of speed, which actually we don't need them to do. And so the fact that now in a downtown, jaywalking should be rampant. The police chief isn't here tonight, is he? Okay. So jaywalking is a sign of a healthy environment. We had this conversation downtown Flagstaff, which has a network of one-way streets, relatively narrow, relatively low speed, and relatively small blocks. You just walk wherever you want there. You know, the cars kind of got used to it, and so it's like a California city. They actually stop, you know, and so that. But I don't think it's a prescription for a street like this. You, sir.
Could you please talk about the cost of making the street walkable and who or which party should bear the cost? The benefit per person trip, the person trip benefit of investment in a walk environment related to the cost of building it is a far better investment than any investment we do in motor vehicle transportation. So we fund the motor vehicle, what I call the vehicle realm of the street, without batting an eye. But we get cheap when it comes to the sidewalk, even though the per trip cost is much lower on the sidewalk. And so I think that issue, you know, the money should come from the same source, and the cost is just the way that what's happened nationally with that, and I think this is maybe a good thing. We've created the term complete streets. And the notion is that there's an appropriate set of functions that an urban street should be designed to meet. And you should design all of those functions into the street. And one of those functions is walking. And that's maybe a little easier way to think about it. When you build a street, you don't say, well, we had money for the street, but we just didn't have enough money for the storm sewer. Because that doesn't work. You have to build the storm sewer. And sidewalks should be the same way. You just have to build them. It's just part of the right way to build the street. Are you suggesting that the cost of providing pedestrian infrastructure is unaffordable or not available? Or? Let's say you just walk now downtown Houston. You want to make the street on the block walkable. How much would it cost and who should pay for it?
Well, I think the same entity that has responsibility for the street should pay for it. The cost is marginal, and I wouldn't, that's why I did the slides about prioritization, because if you have hundreds of miles, maybe thousands of miles, of poor, tolerant, barely tolerant, or intolerant pedestrian environment, you can't fix it overnight. You don't have that much money. So you should fix it as you rebuild the streets. When you do a storm sewer project, you should fix the sidewalk. If you do a major resurfacing or a full depth replacement of the pavement, you should fix the sidewalks. We've had some of our clients have gotten pretty interested in, you have to think about the tax structure. We have a unique tax structure in Texas and Houston, but some of our clients have believed, Redmond, Washington is one example, that when they actually narrowed the street up from 4 lanes to 3, what's called a road dial, making room for on-street parking, or which is one of their streets, or on-street bike lane, a striped on-street bike lane, which is another one of their streets, slowing the traffic down with marginal impact on traffic capacity, that they were actually adding enough value to the abutting property that eventually they would make money. Eventually, the increase in property tax revenues would more than pay for the subtraction of capacity. You know, I think that would be an interesting study that you and I should work on for Houston. We should do some research and actually try to work that out in terms of what the cost benefits are. Because what you're doing, you're such a young city, you don't know this yet. But when you're over widening these streets, you're sucking value out of the properties.
right? It'll take a few years for it to take effect, but it's happening. So you're actually giving yourselves a bad deal in terms of property tax. You do have property tax. Okay. So I gave a speech in Wyoming one time where I was talking about property taxes, and you're like, what? Okay. I'm going to work.
One more.
I'd say
I've been involved with the reconstruction of the Westheimer Post Oak intersection, the Westheimer Post Oak intersection to make it have appropriate sidewalks, and just recently finishing I-10, working with TxDOT for sidewalks on I-10. It's always been the afterthought. It's the last piece built, which makes it the most expensive piece to build because all the signs and posts infrastructure is put there before the sidewalk is even placed. Is there any place that would require building the pedestrian realm before building the roadway?
Many cities in North America have gone that direction now. And the interesting thing to know about that is that I have a series of whole presentation I do on this that has to do with street types and what happens with property values and economics. But when you in your downtown, or somebody asked about, or in your activity centers, in your transit nodes that are going to be associated with this transit system, the most important thing that transportation should be doing for you is access and circulation. And pass-through travel is not actually benefiting those land uses. And so when you design the transportation system for pass-through traffic, you're basically saying we don't care what happens to the value of these properties. We only care about our level of service for the pass-through traffic. That's kind of a sucker's game because it's actually your city, and you actually need those places to be great places. And so a lot of cities, I could rattle off, Denver, Boulder, Seattle, Portland, Charleston, and Charlotte, and even places like Orlando and Tampa. I mean, it's the trend. Is for cities to say, wait a second, we're not traffic conduits, we're places. We want to be places. We want people to come here and spend money, not have to here on every someplace else. And Denver Houston has this issue a little bit because you're so big that people are traveling relatively long distances. And so how do you have places that are destinations in and of themselves? Simple. You prioritize access and circulation above pass-through traffic. And that goes against everything. You have to rewrite your rules because all your rules right now prioritize pass-through traffic above access and circulation. I don't know. It seems kind of dogmatic, but I mean that's the practical way the cities go down. The first thing you do is rewrite your standards. Write a multimodal LOS system instead of just a traffic LOS system. Set priorities for complete streets. What part of the complete street is the highest priority? You can do that off cities. And so it sounds radical simply because you're a young city. Young cities are in a hurry to build themselves. And then later they look back and they say, oh, some of this isn't very nice, and they start reinvesting and fixing what they did. That's not unique to Houston. That's every city in America. So you're just young, and I think that you will come to these issues.
And he likes this, so let's keep going.
Yeah. Okay, the question was, could I comment a little bit on the intellectual capital that are involved in these choices and decisions, because it seems like we struggle against certain professions in decision making that are made in the top. Well, I wish I could say that there's sweeping change underway. There is, but it's not everywhere, and it's not uniform. But what I think is, I teach at the University of Colorado, and I teach different kinds of classes, including I get a lot of engineering students in my classes. And I thought a lot about this problem because I don't think engineers, by and large, get good educations, and that's part of the problem. But the other thing I think is that an engineer by training and by inclination, we become engineers because we are, like you become mathematicians if you think about theories, and you become engineers if you think about fixing something. And so the engineers are really good and really are happiest if you give them a difficult challenge and tell them, we want you to accomplish this and you have to figure out how to do it. That's what they do best. What they're very terrible at is policy. Do not want to let engineers do policy. And so the cities that are doing very well at this are the cities that put their city management and their city government in charge of those decisions. And so they're not made by a small group of people who have a lot of control. And that takes a while to change. But if the city council says, this is what we want, and they pass ordinances that say, these are the standards, and they write a comprehensive plan that says, this is how we're going to evaluate adequacy of facilities, then that's the law. And then the engineer just has to figure out how to do it. And they love to do that. That's what they're good at. So I think lots of times you can say, we don't like it that our traffic engineers design streets that are 12-foot lanes wide. Why do they do that? They're terrible people. And then you look in your ordinance, and you have written something in your ordinance that says we have to have a level service seat on our streets and or a level service seat. You are the people in democracy who can govern things. Yes, I'll go to you. Flannel shirt.
I'm curious to know if in other cities that you've seen, if pedestrian development has caused any amount of economic displacement for businesses or individuals that can't keep pace with the increase in land value. If you've encountered that, and if so, what element of our planning reconciles that very real economic reality?
Well, you have special planning here, so I'm not sure that I can answer the question in a Houston-specific way. But yes, it is a challenge. It's a bizarre thing. We did a study for downtown Aspen, which is a very premier education. And does anybody want to guess what the highest revenue per square foot of any retail space in downtown Aspen is? T-shirt shops. Highest revenue per square foot. So yeah, there are unintended market implications. So some of the things you can do. Now that's kind of I picked an extreme example. What does happen, for example, in the Boulder pedestrian model, is that it can be hard for local entrepreneurs to afford the lease rates because it's premium space. Those stores make a lot of money. And so that bids the lease rate up. And so the small local entrepreneur can't really be there because they can't pay the lease rate. The national chain can be there because they've got this highly efficient system with a lot of volume and they can live on a 4% markup. Whereas the local entrepreneur needs a 10 or 15% markup and they can't compete. What I would say is that there are a couple things you can do, and some cities have, I don't think it particularly works to write an ordinance that says that in this place you can only have local entrepreneurs. Those ordinances have not done well. I'm not even sure that'd be possible in Houston, I don't know. But what you can do is allow subdivision of retail space. Most of you, I don't know the laws in Houston, but most cities actually prohibit the subdivision of store space. So you can't have, you have 2,000 square foot store, you can't have 3 stores in it. Yeah. And so Aspen, Boulder, other places have written ordinances that allow the subdivision of a single retail space without necessarily building separate entrances and having closed off and so on. Because the small entrepreneurs lots of times only want small store space. They don't have that much inventory, they can't pay that much. And they'll thrive quite well if they're in an environment where they have a synergistic relationship with other small retailers. And so some of that is working.
A lot of like mixed land uses actually.
Land use mix helps a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually our coffee shops in Boulder, the locally owned coffee shops, are doing better than the Starbucks and the big chains. Maybe, I'm not sure why that is, but I think it has to do with the fact that when you get into a choice retail environment, you seek uniqueness, you seek the special experience as opposed to the experience you could have in Kansas or Oklahoma or wherever. And so you seek the special. But then another thing that a lot of cities have done is they've said, look, this is the Galleria's name. We have this shopping district, and it's going to be chains. It's going to be the big one. And that's okay. We're glad to have that money. We're glad to have that going on. We need other places where the smaller entrepreneurs can be as well. And that adds character to our cities, because not every district should be the same. You should have places that are the funky little boutique place with the local entrepreneurs, and then the big chain someplace. And some of the most interesting research on travel behavior that's being done is by some of our sister firms for Caltrans and I'm sort of looking over their shoulder enviously, wishing I was working on that project. But they're evaluating something as simple as the impact that having multiple retail destinations within a larger neighborhood fabric has on motor vehicle trip making and pedestrian activity. And what it shows is that the more richness you have of destinations, the more variety. I mean, Starbucks is a Starbucks. You have Starbucks on every block, you go to the one that's on your block. But if you have a Starbucks and a pizza and something else, and Joe's and Bill's and Tom's and Sally's comes out, pretty soon people are moving around between those, and you're generating pedestrian activity, and you're reducing vehicle miles traveled. And it's kind of a bizarre little data point that we're all watching kind of closely. And so in our traffic modeling, the new modeling, the 5D traffic models that we're working on, we're actually using the number of retail destinations within a given area as an input variable that influences overall traffic. It's kind of interesting. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yes.
I was intrigued by your use of the Boulder Mall as an example of it, and it's really a rather compact area.
Yeah, 4 blocks, 1,200 people.
And the idea that within the urban fabric there can be a very high-quality pedestrian place that's fairly compact, and it's surrounded by a good integrated multimodal connections, and maybe the pedestrian spaces between those high-quality pedestrian areas are just pedestrian tolerant, but it's that localized high-quality pedestrian space and its connections that seems to be the goal you're
Bullseye. If you were in my class, you'd get an A. Yeah, that's it. And what we did for Redmond, Washington in their comprehensive plan was we said exactly what you just said. Oh, we didn't say tolerant, we said supportive. So we said, you're going to have these pedestrian places, let's map them. Let's actually decide where they're going to be. And let's transit serve them, and let's do some consolidated parking to support them, and do some other things to make them work. And let's have the rest of the city be pedestrian supportive, realizing we're not going to get there right away. It's going to take years to get there because we have a lot of studies. It's not pedestrian supportive now. So that really helped them a lot to sort of set priorities and to think strategically about it. So when you rebuild a street, you rebuild it pedestrian supportive. But if you're just going out to spend money for pedestrian places, you do it in your pedestrian places. You see what I'm saying? Good, thanks. You said it better than I did. I guess we should wrap.
So I just wonder if the fact that Boulder, Colorado is a wonderful place has anything to do with the fact that Jim Charlier lives there. Probably so, right? So I just want to say one thing that's important and why the timing on this is so interesting is because this Urban Corridors project, a lot of you know about, that's been going on for the past few years to figure out how to deal with all these 68 transit stations we're going to have in the neighborhoods, is now coming to ordinance. One of the mixed-use committee of the Planning Commission is getting close to having an ordinance to bring forward to the commission and to council. And we will all have to react to that. We will all have to look at that carefully, and some of it's technical, and it's an opportunity we only get once. We're about to do 68 transit-oriented neighborhoods in Houston, Texas. And I guess if you know anything about history, Houston was founded as a transit-oriented city and remained that way for 75 or 100 years. Things have changed recently. We're going back to that, and there's a lot to fix. So I hope everybody will stay involved in watching our website and trying to get into the civic discussion that we hope will ensue. So thanks to all of you for coming, and thanks very much to Jim Charlie